Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kidney Coach YouTube channel. I am naturopath Fiona Chin, co-founder of the Kidney Disease Solution, Kidney Coach, and of course, our supplements Hygenesis. And today I'm joined by Dr. Rick Cohen. So Dr. Rick Cohen, we've not had on our podcast before. I was blessed to meet him a month or so ago, and I was so impressed by his knowledge that I said, you've got to come on our podcast. So he's a physician and functional medicine doctor with over 20 years of experience in the medical field. And he actually founded the company called Ignite Longevity, which provides personalized assessments and integrative interventions to help people take a comprehensive approach to living longer and healthier lives. So he has a real focus on longevity and inside the longevity space as well. He has dedicated his career to the treatment and prevention of lifestyle and metabolic-related diseases, hence why he has some knowledge and skills when it comes to kidney disease. His goal is to help his patients unlock the keys to achieving optimal metabolic health. So as a physician, he strives to educate those who are ready and willing to commit to living a full life. He believes that this is the key to preventing and reversing chronic diseases, including diabetes, which of course we know is the biggest cause of kidney disease. He is a strong advocate for using natural foods, minimally processed organic foods, and of course, integrative approaches to healthcare. He majored in biochemical engineering at Duke University and received his biomedical degree with honours from Drexel University. You grew up playing ice hockey, huh? That almost sounds like you could be half Canadian there, Rick. And he qualified for the 1986 Winter Olympic Games in the sport of luge, which is really cool. So has a background in fitness and obviously been at that. I mean, if you're qualifying for the Olympics, I call you an elite athlete there.
Luge requires, you know what luge requires? Luge requires not being scared.
Yeah, okay.
It's perfect. So that's the challenge. You have a strong start, and then if something goes wrong, your natural instinct is to like tighten up and lean your head. So the natural response is to do nothing and let the sled fly.
Right.
It was super fun.
Hats off to you for that one. I'm impressed just with that. So and when he's not luging, which I don't think you do so much anymore, he's running running his great big company. I know he's doing some really amazing things in the field of longevity and working with some really cool peptides. We'll have him back to do another podcast on some of these more unusual stem cell stimulating peptides. And he's got really amazing knowledge when it comes to the role of iron and copper in the body and the mTOR pathway as well. But today we're going to be talking about all things protein and amino acids, because I know you've got a supplement company there, and one of the supplements that they've got in there is an amino acid profile powder, which is really quite amazing. So I want to talk about that. But when it comes to kidney disease and protein gets a bad rap. And, there's we often recommend that people reduce their protein intake and take it away from red meat and do plant-based proteins because of the nitrogen and all those sort of things. So we wanted to delve into the science behind protein, amino acids. Is it really as bad as we think it is? And what do you do to make sure that you don't end up protein deficient? So, Dr. Cohen, I'm going to hand it over to you. So let's start at a high level. Protein, what is it? What's the big deal?
Protein. What's the big deal? I think we all need to think of protein as a delivery of amino acids. Okay, so we'll apologize for anyone we find this too basic, but I think in my years that sometimes what I might think is basic is not for people who don't do this for a living, right? So protein is amino acids, protein foods. Okay, so there's a difference, right? So you can eat meat and it has protein in it, but it also has all these other we'll call animal-based nutrients, carnitine and CLA and other nutrients which are healthy for the body. And you can eat protein in plants and it has fiber and B vitamins and so forth, but that's not protein, right? That's only a part of it. So you want to think of protein as amino acids, and amino acids are like Legos, right? Amino acids, so your protein needs to be digested and then it needs to be absorbed. and then it needs to be in this digestion absorption. So now you're delivering this pool of amino acids, which are different for each protein source, depending on how they're grown. So for example, corn is deficient in lysine, but animal protein, right, which has taken vegetables and then packed them together to make muscle, is complete because it's done the process of arranging it for you. Sort of an interesting, just an aside, if you think of cattle, and in the same vein of protein, cattle are a protein factory, right? So think about it. They eat grass. They eat grass and they grow huge and massive muscle, but they have a different ability to process foods than we do. They are literally a protein factory, which we evolved to take advantage of in particular ways. So, meat plan agenda, beliefs all aside, that's sort of how the process worked. So these amino acids are then taken, and your body needs to put them back together or send them to particular purposes. So whether they're to help with muscle repair or muscle growth, to build immune cells, to build enzymes, right? So all these three tasks, and then proteins are not only these long chains of amino acids, which is what a protein is, right? They're folded up into different forms. And then these shapes of proteins can unfold and fold, and then they sort of fit into keys into cells. And with AI now, we're beginning to understand the folding of proteins, because there's like trillions of ways these proteins can fold. And part of the aging process of protein degradation is this loss of folding. Okay.
Interesting. So it's like having bad laundry that's just chucked on the bed and not folded properly versus your cleaner or mum that comes in and fresh presses the suit and all of those sort of things. So as we age.
Exactly. Yeah, sort of lock and key. So we need to think of protein as Legos, right? So we get this Lego box, we've taken it apart. We need to then get it into the body, and then the body figure out what it needs to do with it and puts it into different places based on our needs. Those needs will change for each person, depending on our size, our activity, the state of our health, whether we have disease, whether we're young, whether we're old, or gender, and so forth. So there are many different phases of life that our protein requirements, for all sorts of things will be modified. Now, the thing about protein is it's not a primary fuel source. The body doesn't. Body uses fat and carbohydrates for fuel.
Yeah.
Where in essence, protein can be turned into. There's a process called gluconeogenesis where it can be, but it's just like if you're fasting, right? If you're fasting, if you're starving, and your body, you've gone 2 weeks without food and 3 weeks, that's when your body starts to catabolize, right? It breaks down your muscle proteins and then starts to create some glucose, but also now you're developing ketones, and it's a whole complex process to keep us alive, but not a good thing, right? Not a good thing if you're burning down your house to stay warm.
Yeah, exactly.
But if we become protein deficient, you can see what happens, right? So if proteins are the foundation of our house, it's the heating system, it's our protective system. Now, when we start to become protein deficient, or really amino acid deficient, we become amino acid deficient, we can't build things in the way we want to. And if you can't put these proteins together and they can't fold properly, then your function begins to decline. And, it affects us in a whole variety of different ways. One of the you can survive. I mean, it's just a way to think. You can survive without glucose, right? Carbohydrates. Your body has a way. You can survive without fat. But take away all protein. Just eat fruit, or you're going to be. Yeah, I'm thinking in the back of my head. Oh, there's fruitarians. It's like, no, I'm sorry. They're going to have an issue at some point. something's going to break down. We can't survive without the foundation of protein. So, or amino acids. So hopefully that is a first understanding of protein really is a Lego of amino acids that we need to unpack and re-put together for the body.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because, as you said, we don't need it for energy, but we need it to build every cell, from our immune system to replacing skin cells to replacing whatever it is. Like, it's the foundation of every tissue in the body is these amino acids. So it is really, really important. So protein really is, as you said, a delivery system for the amino acids. It's the amino acids that are super important. So what happens, because obviously in kidney disease, and we do this too, one of the things that we're often recommending to patients is to reduce their protein intake because of the link of protein in big capital P and its effect on the kidney. So talk to me about that. Is that not true? Is it protein not breaking down properly being the issue, or is it an amino acid issue? What is it in kidney disease that gives protein such a bad name, and does it deserve the bad name that it has?
Got it. There's lots of nuances to this, but the big picture here is it's not the protein. Again, it's the amino acids, and it's not even the amino acids. It's the nitrogen. So proteins have a nitrogen base, which everything's built off of. And when our kidneys are not functioning well, we can't process that nitrogen. We can't eliminate it in an effective way, and that starts to degrade the kidneys even further. So that's one issue. And the other issue, it's really not an amino acid issue. It's a source of the protein. If you recall, we talked about proteins having other factors, especially animal proteins are high in phosphorus. And when your body is not filtering things out quite well, then you start to build up phosphate levels or phosphorus levels in your blood, and that has potential serious consequences, more acute consequences, and could lead to multiple pathologies and ultimately death if you build up phosphorus levels too high.
Yeah.
Not a protein issue though. It's the protein that the food it's coming in the food package. It's just along with the food, and there's certain foods that have more phosphorus than others. And that there's ways to manage that, but that's again nuanced. The big picture is it's the nitrogen that gets filtered through the kidneys, and then the extra phosphorus, which is in a number of different protein sources that further worsen the problem. So the pros are keep your protein low so you don't have the amino acid nitrogens, and avoid proteins that would have extra phosphorus, right? So you're not building up phosphorus levels. And that's like, okay, that's a good thing, but you are sort of, as we talked before, if you don't have sufficient amount of protein and your body now it's in a disease state, we could call it's more catabolic, right? For your body to recover, it needs to be repairing, it needs to be regenerating, and that's an anabolic state. And you can't do that very well without protein to trigger it. And there's again nuances, because too much protein, too much calories, and we talked about drive something called mTOR, which causes senescence, which could have been the cause of the problem to begin with.
Yes. Yep.
So everything has its yin and its yangs. Everything has its sequence and its timing. So in a protocol, one could, I'm jumping ahead a bit, but if you can suppress mTOR and then cycle through it, there's ways to sort of trigger this growth cycle or repair cycle, but not overstimulate this hyperfunction senescence cycle.
It does to me, and it's so nuanced. And so for anyone listening that's listened to other podcasts that we've done quite a few podcasts with Dr. Morgan Camp and Dr. Alex Grimberg about the issue of senescence. And we now know, and Dr. Cohen's talking about this, because when you're in the longevity space, you cannot not hear about senescent cells, and how we know that senescence really drives a lot of our disease of aging and the aging process, where the immune system can no longer clear out the zombie cells. So what I'm hearing is then too much of maybe the wrong type of protein or protein can play an effect on mTOR1, which means we're going to get a buildup of senescence. We also potentially have the buildup of phosphates with the wrong types of protein, which affects that clotho-FGF23 pathway. And then we've also got the issue of nitrogen. So they're the issues that we see with protein and kidney disease and why people might say to stay away with it. But what happens if we don't have enough amino acids in our diet? And as you said, that means we move into a more catabolic state and we can't heal. But what else would happen if we just went low protein? Like, what are the sort of symptoms, or what do we see happens to people when they take out? Because I've seen this in kidney patients where they just go massively low protein. They're not using things like keto analogs, which we can talk about later. And they end up with so many issues from going without working with someone like you or I to understand that low protein is actually will speed up degeneration and actually make them sicker. So talk to me.
Right, exactly. You're doing a short-term fix, but ultimately you're accelerating the end, in essence, because you lose muscle, you lose better metabolic control, your immune function depresses, you're furthering inflammation. So it's a double-edged sword, more than that, right? It's a problem, and it's surprising to me, just looking at it from non-kidney, non-traditional sense, that the solution's pretty straightforward, in regard to how to address this. And and it's really more of phasic programs. It all depends on where someone is. And we just had a cat go through a kidney crisis, an 18-year-old cat, and it's not human, but it's like a very nuanced, and they're much more adaptive to the process. But it's like, we adjusted some of his phosphates. We used some phosphate binders. We kept protein because cats are carnivores. We're just eliminating. We're choosing foods that don't have phosphates for now. We're using a nutrient to sort of help the body clear phosphorus, and we're hydrating him, and he's doing fine now, knock on wood. And we've got him back in, from like a cat creatine of 9, quite high, quite high, phosphorus of 9 as well. So that's all. He gained, one of the signs was, you lose weight, right? So you're in this massive catabolic state. So he had gone from 13 pounds to 10 and a half. So that's 130-pound woman going to 105 pounds in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, wow.
That's extreme, catabolism. So he's back to like 120, 12 and a half pounds now. So again, knock on wood, but it's an appetite issue. So it's nuanced and hard to say if you can, he's 18. So I don't think we ever completely return, get it back, because certainly the tubulars are damaged. But so getting back to humans, to me, the simple solution is lower plant protein. Well, maybe we can explain that, but I'll tell you the solution up front, right? Lower plant protein, okay, with only plant protein because you need something to eat, right? And you could get nutrients, and to get some of the other nutrients, if you want them, using essential amino acids, which provide about 4 grams. So if we talked about net nitrogen utilization, so net nitrogen utilization is if you eat a protein that has amino acids, and it's basically a calculation of how much of that nitrogen that are in the amino acids in the food or in the amino acids themselves that actually the body uses. So with a properly formulated essential amino acid, 99% of the nitrogen is maintained and used for anabolic purposes. So the body takes it all, because you drink it, it's all absorbed because it doesn't have to break it down. You don't have stomach issues. You don't have hydrochloric. You don't have to worry about intestinal inflammation. It's just absorbed really rapidly, 20 minutes. And now you have free floating amino acids in a ratio that's been shown to be easily used by the body, right? So there's different amino acids with different functions. Some are required in higher amounts and some you don't need much at all, but you need some because they're called
Hmm.
essential to
Hmm.
build, right? Build a team. Like having a baseball team, you might have a bench player, but you still need him, right? You still
Yeah,
need
yeah,
him
yeah,
at times to, or you need your relief pitcher to come in, and not a
yeah.
major part of the team, but without them, you're in trouble. So if you have this, so the net nitrogen utilization is 99%. A plant protein, the net nitrogen utilization is as low as 20%. So
Wow.
actually, right. So if you have an amino acid and then it's utilized, you can do comparisons with regard to one versus the other, and even an equivalent of 100 grams of an amino acid, you're only losing one effective gram of nitrogen, or whatever the exact amount of nitrogen is. But if you're going to take a lower amount of a plant-based protein, not only is it not efficient because it has a lower biological value, which is a similar marker, but that intakes how the food is absorbed, and it's another nuance. But I like to just think of NNU. If we said 25% is only used, or as low as 20, you're actually getting more nitrogen from the plant-based protein than you are from the much higher dose of the amino acids because it's all being repackaged.
Amazing. So tell me if I get this right. So for anyone listening that didn't get that, if you take an amino acid supplement, such as the one that we'll talk about, you're going to absorb 99% of the nitrogen, meaning the kidneys don't have to clear it. So because you're absorbing and utilizing it, that means, and the amino acids are highly bioavailable, it's not a big deal if you're taking too much sodium bicarbonate and you've reduced your stomach acid, it's going to get absorbed. It's going to go and do what it needs to do. And because the nitrogen goes with it, the kidneys don't have to filter it. It's gone into the tissue. Versus, let's say you're on a high, you're getting your protein sources via plants, because that's what we've said to do in an alkalizing kidney-based diet. Only 20% of that nitrogen is going to hit the cells, meaning there's going to be 80% nitrogen from plant-based protein foods that are going to hit the kidneys, so the kidneys are going to have to clear. So the nitrogen issue in plant-based proteins is actually worse for the kidneys versus the nitrogen issue in other sources, so animal-based protein. Yes?
Yeah, I mean, animal-based protein, it's tricky because you're still going to get the problem with animal-based protein is you're getting the phosphorus,
Yes, which we know has a massive issue with kidneys
which
and
has a
health.
massive issue, right? And theoretically, an animal-based protein or a protein powder perhaps may have a higher NNU
Yep.
than a plant protein, but it would still, a dairy-based protein powder, perhaps if that's a choice, if you're just looking at numbers, might have at a higher amount, may have a less nitrogen contribution to the kidney.
Mm-hmm.
But that may have some other issues, but it's still nowhere near the efficiency of the essential amino acid. So if that,
And
so
isn't it
yeah, so the plant
fascinating?
protein is okay. I mean, and then you get back to what do you eat, right?
Well, this is what I was going to say, because people will be like, well, hang on a minute, we've been doing plant-based because that's what kidneys we've been told to do and not to do. And it really comes back to, and I know you and I think very similarly about this, which is you have to treat the person, not the disease cause, not the effect. So for some people, nitrogen clearance is going to be a much bigger issue. Maybe they're the people that do, because we do see them, people that do very well on a carnivore diet, because it wasn't phosphorus that was ever their issue. It was maybe more the nitrogen process. And then you've got other people that will put in like a carnivore diet or eat more meat, and their kidney function just completely goes to shit, for want of a better word. And that's probably going to be that they've got this FGF23 chlorphosphorus issue. But no one tests for that. No one sits down and says, look, Rick, your kidneys aren't functioning properly. We've done some tests and your nitrogen's quite high. So actually you're going to be better if we can get really good quality amino acid powders into you. And like no one does that. So people are playing this guessing game, and then we get this black and white war that happens on my YouTube channel here, where if carnivore diet saved me, someone else says, well, carnivore diet nearly killed me, and we, right? So no wonder people are so confused. So
it isn't exactly. Yeah, we're all different, and if you do more in-depth assessments, you can then begin to, and you do more detailed tracking, and then you begin to understand, like you can do lots of testing now, right? We can look at
Yeah.
proteomics, right? And all these signaling molecules, which are amino acid driven, right? Because you need the RNA to transcribe proteins to create all these signaling molecules, and we begin to understand those, and that's a whole nother level of depth. And you had John on from Neo
Yes.
7. So,
Yes.
so he talked about how these signaling molecules can be very, very huge, and resetting those can be quite powerful. Um, that's a, that's either a more acute solution for some, or it's a higher level cost solution for others because it's not an inexpensive therapy. It's a more foundational. It's a more foundational, but still you need to know what to eat. Right? So
Exactly.
we need to, whatever we do, we need to be able to eat. And you nailed it. It's like it's individual, and maybe to me as essential amino fits into anything. So even if you want to eat meat, it's like, gosh, meat's part of my life, right? And then you have to go back to why you got the problem to begin with, because we haven't discussed that. Was it a toxin? Was it a medicine? Was it alcohol? Was it diabetes due to, and that is that diabetes from, do you have high uric acid? Does your mitochondria function well? And you have high iron, or you're copper deficient? I mean, there's so many nuances of this to begin to understand how to
Mhm.
really refine it. But if someone wanted to have a little bit of beef or chicken or fish, and take an amino acid with that, that could work. Or maybe they have chicken, fish, and amino acid, and they really like some bean meal, and if that works for them, that could work too. It just gives you more flexibility, and within the more flexibility to maintain muscle status, to actually make your body healthier. It's really hard to become a robust person if you're only consuming 40 to 50 grams or 60 grams of protein a day. I mean, that's the absolute minimum dietary recommended threshold for anyone, that you
Yeah.
don't become like kwashiorkor or protein deficient.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with ideal, protein needs when someone's in a catabolic state or someone wants to actually get healthy. So if someone's goal is, okay, I didn't take care of myself, or I didn't know what to do, and whatever it is, and I developed this process and this disease and this imbalance, and I'm ready to do something now. So if you're ready to do and become healthy, then you have to you have to give the body what it needs to be able to achieve that.
So talk to me about that, because what I heard in that was that by taking something like essential aminos and an amino acid powder with your meal, something changes in the way that protein and amino acids are utilized through the body, or if you're taking something like that to bump the levels up. Walk me through that and what that looks like.
Got it. Well, first thing with amino acid powder, it's generally best to take it away from meals, or
Right.
take with some carbohydrates, because when you start throwing other nutrients in it, or other proteins for sure, that delivery system, which is very rapid, gets slowed down. So you're eliminating one of the benefits of an amino acid, and two, you're throwing in other amino acids along with it. So that's
That's
going to
true.
interfere. Right.
Mhm.
Could I
Yep.
take a break and just go to the bathroom?
Absolutely. Let me press. So yeah, keep going with that. So why you have to take your aminos away from food. So just remind me
Or
again.
with a piece of fruit, or half an
Yep.
apple or something of that sort, tends to work. And just to decide, I got involved in this particular blend and formula based on our work with athletes,
Okay.
and to be able to take something and time it, do the day, during the day, and it's, there's no calories, there's very little calories with it. You can drink it in 10 seconds anytime. So if
Wait.
someone's really training hard or injured, they can take the equivalent of 60 to 70 grams of extra protein, without any burden, just to flood your plasma with these building blocks for recovery. And it makes a big difference. It totally makes a big difference. You take someone who's low protein and you give them amino acids, like it's like a light bulb turns on, because they don't realize how they've been functioning in a sort of a lower gear. It's just
Yeah,
diaries.
fascinating. And it's again, it's what tends to happen in the later stages of kidney disease, unless you're on dialysis, is your protein intake is getting lower and lower. So, I think if you're on stage
Your
five,
albumins, your albumins decreasing, and that's
yep.
yeah.
Yeah, and so you don't have enough protein to repair the kidneys, yet we know that because of the phosphorus and potentially nitrogen issues, we can't give it. But if you're taking amino acid powder, like essential aminos, you have none of the issues that we worry about when it comes to meat or protein in a food source, is what I'm hearing, right? So they are completely safe to take in any stage of kidney disease.
That is correct. Yep. And there's many studies on that too, which is sort of, and it's just it's not surprising. It's sad. It's
Yes.
sad and disappointing that the profession or the study, of health, or really now it's the treatment of disease with one single modality, just ignores that for the most part, right? It's just
It really does. And I'm going to circle back around to this because there is so much, we see again a lot of stuff going on about vegan diets versus carnivore diets and what's better. And people take quite a strong viewpoint on that. Is there, and you sort of did cover it a little bit before about how much you'll absorb, say, through a plant-based protein versus meat and all the other stuff in there. But is there anything else you wanted to, because I know people want to ask that question, because people have such a strong viewpoint and stance on that. Is one better than the other? Does it matter? Where should we get our protein from? Or again, is it an individual thing?
I always say it's an individual thing for the right. So it's an individual thing. However, it's an individual thing. I'd also say to completely exist without animal meat, you're leaving many different nutrients, out.
Mm-hmm.
So any nutritional protocol that has no animal meat is deficient by default in many different nutrients. Just um, and it's less the animal protein. It's like how we sort of evolved. We actually eat more organ meat,
Yes, that's
and
so true. Yes.
right. So it's going to get you. And if you look at any traditional civilization or society, one, they didn't let anything go to waste, right? So if you killed something, you used the whole dang animal, so whether it
Yep.
was the blood or the organs, and guess what? We evolved to use the nutrition from all these different pieces of the animal. If we just eat the flesh, we're missing out on many of the nutrients. And in fact, we could theoretically leave ourselves exposed to certain nutritional imbalances.
Mm-hmm.
So anyone on a carnivore is most of like who are doing it would be eating or supporting themselves with other organ meats. And I went to a traditional Hungarian festival last month, and they make organo koblasht, right? Koblasht. It's a organ sausage,
Wow.
and it was actually not bad, right? But
Oh, really? There you go.
it was
Okay.
actually pretty. Yeah, they seasoned it quite right, and it was actually pretty good. But it's a taste thing, and if you go back, we were just watching. It was actually pretty good. It was Agatha Christie series, A Murder is Easy on BBC,
Oh,
and
cool.
guy was eating breakfast. He had two kidneys,
Mm-hmm.
and two eggs, right? So that he had one little small piece of toast, but that's what they ate. Having said that, some people, it's too heavy or it's a problem for them, and vice versa. Some people, all the lectins and oxalates in vegetables are
Yes.
too much, and we can make an argument. For me, I'm less. I mean, we eat vegetables, but we're more roots and berries and fruits, more
Mm-hmm.
so. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's okay. Well,
but
thank you for
it's
doing
just fine. It's just finding your balance, and it's
that.
nutrition is not a religion. And honestly, from I'll put in my longevity age reversal hat, which is sort of another discussion, but it doesn't matter. None of these are going to, if you're healthy and your biochemistry is good and you have no liver fat and your insulin's low and all these particular, higher level markers are strong, great, right? You have good muscle, whatever is getting it done for you, that's super. But either way, very few people make it past 95, right? Either way. And look at any dietary pundit, influencer over the years, they all died, right? So it's nuances. So, for me, within an age reversal paradigm, sort of, and you spoke with John at Neo 7, and there's pieces of what they're doing and some of the breakthroughs that are on the horizon or that we will learn in the next few years, especially with augmented general intelligence, AGI, is coming, where we'll be able to run billions of trials of strategies. Like
it's cool. Yeah.
Diet will be like, yeah, okay, it's good, but the body will figure out we'll know how to regenerate things. And the body and the diet will be really more of how you feel on a day-to-day basis and not necessarily what's going to happen to you and are you going to live a longer life. Surely don't eat crap, don't eat toxins and chemicals, but the nuance of the individual diet and the religion of diet needs to fade away, right? It's
so glad you said that, Dr. Cohen. Like, I couldn't agree with you more. So that, and just for anyone that didn't hear that, because I mean, my ears prick up, is that with that augmented AI that's coming, and I know you are much more in the driver's seat and understand what's coming down the pipeline there. But we are, and I know Dr. Grimberg spoke to me about this too, that we are sort of 5 to 10 years away from being able to cure some massive things because of this type of technology that's coming and regenerate tissue, which is very exciting for anyone diagnosed with a chronic disease like kidney disease. So,
yeah, as long as the powers that be don't get too greedy or get in each other's way, which is there's a lack of decentralization in this whole field, and there's people who are sort of have their own tech or own field of knowledge, and they really don't. And they might go to conferences together, but and some of the leaders, they know each other, but it's not synergized quite well, and it's not translatable, meaning that the current knowledge is not incorporated into a particular plan. The analogy I use is a symphony. We have lots of instruments out there with great musicians, but an individual musician will never make a symphony. Right. And even if you bring those musicians together, if they don't have a score to play with a concert, with conductor, you don't have music.
No, exactly. You just got a whole pile of noise.
You just have a whole pile of noise. Well, I'm going to play this. No, I want to lead. No, right? Yeah. You said it just doesn't work. So unfortunately, that's a little bit how. And the other paradigm I use is, we'll use Tesla, right? When Tesla goes to build their engine or their car, they don't just go look around to see what other people have and then figure out how to put it together, right? They design their car, which has really tight specs, and they all need to work together, and then they contract the different subcontractors. I need a chip, I need these wires. Well, we don't do that either, because it's really not a comprehensive plan. It's like, how do we keep Fiona healthy? What pieces do we need to make that happen? And it's just a whole bunch of stuff, without.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. Yeah. Interesting times ahead. But I digress. So the other thing no, that was me. The other thing I wanted to get your clarity on was essential amino acids versus branched chain amino acids, because, especially if people are athletic or those sort of things, they can go into a health food store and see essential amino acids, and then there's BCAAs and Is there a preference if you've got a certain health conditions of one over the other, or should you just be taking a lot? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, I mean, BCAA sort of came into vogue within the bodybuilding world, and it was
Yep.
primarily like the main BCAA, which is so there's leucine, isoleucine, and valine. So leucine is the primary trigger of mTOR. So it was experienced or understood that if you take a lot of leucine around working out, you might have better growth, right? And there's studies that suggest that. Um, the problem is it's not a complete protein, right?
Nope.
It's like trying to bring out my baseball team and I just have my pitcher and my catcher.
You're
You
right.
know, I might be able to strike some people out and walk some people, but you hit ball to left field, I'm in trouble. So you need all amino acids to make that happen. So, and the other problem is if you try and you can't exist on BCAs, right? You become amino acid deficient and start to develop all the problems that we talked about. The full amino acid, the essential amino acid panel, you can exist on.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the big difference there. One is a complete, the other is just an isolated support. BCAAs are essential amino acids. So if any EAA formula that's formulated correctly, the BCAAs are typically 40 to 50% of
Oh,
the
interesting.
formula. So
Yep.
they're included. You get the whole team. You don't just
Yeah.
get the pitcher, the catcher, and the first baseman.
Yeah. So people are sitting here going, okay, well, it sounds like maybe, I don't want to, I'll be doing well with the kidney diet. I don't really want to bump up my protein, but maybe I could get some essential amino acids in there to really give me my tissues some more foundations to heal better. What are the benefits that people would see in taking amino acids? And we talked about catabolism and those sort of things, but maybe I'll get you to do what are the big deficiency symptoms that we see if you're not getting enough amino acids? And then when you put them in, what are the things that you see? Like you said, it's like a light bulb, people just light up. So what else are you seeing when you put them in versus the deficiency of amino acids?
Well, I think it's just from in the realm that I work with poor recovery, it's
Yeah.
just poor recovery from activity, um, lack of resilience, to stressors, whether it's a physical um, or a particular viral. So it's that you've lost resilience, you've lost that reserve.
Mm-hmm.
So people just, when you lose that reserve, your body then needs to work harder, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a stressor on your system. So as once you've sort of filled that need again, it's almost like letting your body, go into more of an idle, or you're changing your gears. So you're flowing, you're not under as much stress. So that's I think the biggest thing that I see. People if they've lost muscle, and granted, amino acids don't in and of themselves, you know, build muscle, right? It's not like I'm going to take amino acid, I'm going to put on. No, that doesn't. But they're the pieces that you need if you're physically active to maintain, right? So, and there is a concept. So if someone, it's a catch-22, but if someone is more active, they need more amino acids to fuel the recovery of what their activity is. Obviously, if someone is less active, they don't. But vice versa, if someone's ill and has an illness or some damage, then they need more because they're in a catabolic state. So
Yep.
it's sort of on both ends of it. Um, Taking extra protein, and you look at studies like if someone is not active and eating a ton of protein, that may not be ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if someone is normally active, you know, on a health perspective, it's like 1.6 kilograms per grams per kilogram, right? So
Yeah.
that's
That's
about
yeah.
a good amount, which is which you can do, but it's I just find it harder to do. That's where I use amino acid every day, and it gives me equivalent of about 40 grams of protein. 2 scoops, and it works really well. I throw it in after workout or typically mid afternoon
Yeah.
or an hour or two before dinner. It's my filler.
Yeah,
That works out
great.
really well.
And it's just, and I think you had a bottle there. I was looking at it earlier. It's just a powder and straight into water. So it's
Oh,
not
yeah, I don't have a
pop
package.
down a
Yeah, it's like
steak
if you can.
or,
So, one of the problems was, and I'll honestly say, it's like, so it's just, I don't know if you can see this,
oh yeah,
just
perfect.
like
Yeah.
so amino acids were um, not tasty. They were
No.
quite, no, they're quite bitter and, but at least with what we've been able to do, and sort of like I said, it was something that we've had for 12 years now, I guess, working with athletes, and this is just another use for it. And I'm super glad to be able to share this. Is we've gone through like 8 or 9 revisions over the years to try and get the flavor, and it took, the first 5 years was like, it's not ready, and then it got better, and now it's actually pretty dang good because with some of the newer sweeteners and some of the flavors, and then we realized that putting like a true organic berry powder in there made a nice difference. So it had a berry powder, it has some tart cherry, and
Yum.
it masks some of that back end. And then
Hmm.
you have to play around with a tiny bit of stevia, just a tiny bit, and then a little bit of monk fruit because this is like spending a day in the lab for a few times. They each have a different effect. One's a front end sweetness, and
Yeah.
one's a back end sweetness.
Oh,
So if you
fascinating.
just use one and not the other, that bitterness comes through. But if you use both just in a small amount, in with this berry flavor, which has more of a natural sweetness, it's a little bit more of a symphony. So it's actually not bad. And if you put it in like literally that much,
Yep.
4 ounces of water, spin it up and you drink it, it's 5 seconds. And
Yeah,
five,
right.
10 seconds, you're done. So you
So
can do that anytime.
anyone in any stage of kidney disease can take these.
Yes, I don't see any problem with any of it.
Great. So we don't have the
Right.
nitrogen phosphate issue when we take an essential amino acid profile. And then people are taking keto analog. So what we would say in stage 5, very low protein diet, keto analogs, but you could take this alongside. So you're not technically on a low protein diet because you're getting your essential amino acids. You're just reduced it through foods to reduce the nitrogen phosphate issue. You could put this and your keto analogs on top, no problem.
Right. That is correct. Yeah, you don't have the problems that we're trying to avoid, or yeah, that's basically it. It doesn't present that. And
So
I
why?
think I'm not sure. I don't know why. I think it was just taste, or I'm not sure. I really don't know why.
Because that was my thing, is like, why has my renal dietitian and why has my doctor not told me that this would be a great way to combat the decrease of protein in my diet, but to make sure that I have all the building blocks I need to stay healthy, repair, and keep my immune system functioning well.
Right. I guess I would say, how much have they told you about all those other things that you can do to keep your immune system health? And it's just
Yes.
another one of the pieces that fit into all the things that we can do, and this is a simple one,
Yeah.
whether there's clotho and more in-depth individual
Yeah.
genetic, metabolic, proteomic analysis. So it's just not in the standard of care currently. Right. So why did my mother just go to the hospital after she broke her femur, and they're feeding her orange juice and white bread, right? Like for breakfast with cereal. Like, really?
Yeah. I know.
Right. 82-year-old woman, it's like who has some metabolic issues. That's what they're giving her.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Okay. So that's been so good. So what I'm hearing and again, tell me if I've got this wrong. If you're out there with kidney disease and thinking protein is your enemy, it's not. You need essential amino acids. Really, the problem with protein, be it plant or animal, and they've got different nuances about what's in them and whether they're complete, and the nitrogen really is the nitrogen phosphate issues. By using something like an amino acid formula that Dr. Rick Cohen's company has put together, which is essential aminos, right? And I'll put the link in below if people want to have a look at this. is that you bypass all of those issues. You can supplement and get extra protein in there that's not going to throw out your nitrogen or phosphate levels, so it's not going to hurt the kidneys. And if anything, you're giving yourself the essential amino acids that are required to repair, rebuild. If you've got a metabolic disorder, elevated blood pressure, all of those sort of things, if anything, having some essential amino acids in there are only going to be your friend to actually help the body repair itself. Did I hear all of that correctly?
Right. To mention is like for a lot of people, it sort of blunts if you don't have enough protein, you tend to feel hungry a lot.
Yeah, that's true.
And, some people do okay with vegetable, beans, and fiber. I don't. But if you use the amino acids, it triggers sort of an immune response, triggers a hormonal response, to sort of blunt hunger. So, and that's, one of the benefits of eating when you're eating a meal is you eat your protein first, or eat your vegetables and your protein, and then have your carbohydrates afterwards because you're slowing their absorption, as opposed to carbohydrate first, which then triggers insulin, and then you get hungry. Or, how many times have someone, like if you eat a meal and you're going out and like you have a taste of some dessert, and it's like you weren't hungry, and all of a sudden you just finished it, right?
Yeah, exactly. You always have room for dessert. So true. Is there
Right.
anything that you've missed, Dr. Cohen, that you want to add about the importance of making sure that amino acids are part of your dietary intake and the role that they play in promoting health, longevity, and that they're safe to take in kidney disease? Is there anything we've missed in this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of studies out there. It's just something that hasn't been introduced, or it's just the lack of awareness, I suppose.
Mhm.
It's you nailed it very clearly. It's something that's easy to do, and you should be able to significantly notice a difference in how you feel,
Yeah, right.
over a shorter period of time. And some people could start slow, and then just add it in. If someone's just, we're always, you know, dealing with a condition. And so there's trepidation and fear about trying something different, because it's maybe not what the person who's under care is suggesting. But on the other hand, it's like, think about it. Does it make logical sense? And then just go really slowly. It's not
Yeah,
like, it's people have been using amino acids and use all the time. It's just the right formula and the right balance. And
yeah,
your body will tell you if it's right for you. And you can easily track um, how you were doing as well. And, like I said, we've had people with kidney disease, not a lot, this is not my primary focus per se, but just use amino acids.
yeah,
That's it, right? That's their sole protein source. And then they supplement with other nutrients and then fats and vegetables or whatever. And they
yeah.
just stay away because it's a pure, easy way, and they can titrate it based on, their blood chemistries, because that's ultimately, the key thing that's important. And if you're giving more amino acids, you're also helping the kidneys sort of heal a bit too, right?
100%. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you're reducing inflammation, you're helping detoxify. And so it's this catch 22 without them. It's a no brainer.
It is. Well, I was about to say that. So,
It's a no brainer, right?
and you've
It would be my first, anyone seeing me, it's like the first thing I would, you know, it would be first step to do,
yeah,
stop toxin foods,
yeah,
cut down other sources of protein, get amino acids to make sure you're in a more anabolic state, and then begin to make some of the lifestyle changes that you need to do, and individualize, right, as you go, right? Because we can overthink things, and sometimes we get too much data, but there's certain things that are quite basic, and this
yeah.
is one of them.
Fascinating. Well, that was fantastic. So, thank you so much for anyone listening that's now thinking, okay, I really want to add these in. Dr. Rick's got an amazing formula that he's worked on and put together, the one you saw with the getting the taste right, because you're right, amino acids can be pretty bleh. So, I'll put the link in below, which means you can head over and get those. You ship them all around the world?
Yeah, we can, sure.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll put the link in below so people can have a look. If you've got comments or anything that you want to ask Dr. Cohen, let me know. We are definitely going to get him back for a podcast to talk about, as you can tell, he's got some amazing knowledge in there. I really want to delve into iron and
we need to talk about iron. We need to, yeah.
And some of these new peptides coming through that stimulate stems and all sorts of great stuff. So we'll get Dr. Cohen back to do those conversations. But anything you want to know in the meantime, drop in the comments below. Remember to hit subscribe and like. That way you'll get notified when we do another podcast with this amazing man. Thank you for being part of our community. And Dr. Cohen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it and your knowledge. And I can't wait to have more conversations with you.
Well, thank you, Fiona.
No worries. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.